It's a Tuesday.
It's YouTube.
That's pretty cool.
What language do they type to you?
What?
Like that weird language that makes no sense at all?
Isn't it Russian?
I would assume it's Russian.
Where it's like it's not letters, it's their own letters.
Yeah, it's like squiggles.
Squiggles.
It says very bad connection.
There goes that idea. And you always part it towards me, right? Towards this side.
Yeah, I changed it, but it's, yeah, it right now
Did it connect? Did you go to it in the morning?
Mm-hmm. Why? Because my arms are shaking?
Round of the head, or from above the round of the head. I'm going to use that as a guide. Probably not going to reach because this area was a bit too short. But at least I will have a visual on how tight my vertical shape should be. Also, you guys didn't give me an answer for my vertical shape.
No, it's a triangle.
Triangular, so graduation, where external, okay.
Just how triangular would depend on how steep you wanna take it.
Yes, so actually, the triangular will depend on pre-existing length, right? So I don't really have a choice, I don't have an option, right? All right, so exactly what you guys said, it depends on what I want to do with my front pieces, right? So do I want to do round or do I want to do triangular so that the front is a little tiny bit softer and longer, right? So to keep it softer and longer, technically I should start in the back, continue going all the way, working on base, and then when I get to the front of the ear, over direct and lift my fingers up so that all this creates softness and texture and a bit more movement. So, but working on this length, doing this, will be much harder than doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the first section alone. That's going to be for my finishing touches. My second section, I'm going to over direct the section into, so we're going to call this section 1. I'm going to over direct wherever section 2 lives. Immediately it's going to give me more length on the hairline part, except that, instead of that,
So
right?
you're treating this section as your section 1, where normally your section 3 would be. That's going to be your section 2.
So if this section 1, this is section 2,
Right.
I'm going to take section 2 and cut it where section 3 is.
Okay.
So I'm going to cut this part a little bit shorter, and that's going to be a little tiny bit longer. Makes sense, right? All right, Connie, so feel free to, because I'm going to block the view, so feel free to move wherever so that it's visible for the camera. All right, so if this is on base, right, if this is where the hair grows from, I'm going to move it back just a little tiny bit. Now my vertical shape, how I'm holding my fingers, right, all depends on these shorter bits that I have in here. So I have to find some of the shorter bits. Here it is. So it's falling right in this area. So I have to take this pretty tight. Also, if I graduated, so I'm going to cut it to here. If I graduated, what geometric shape will my vertical shape be, Connie?
If you graduated, what would your vertical shape be?
If I'm doing graduation,
Triangular?
triangular. This triangular shape has a corner. Corner is putting quotation marks. Does it have a buildup of weight?
Yes.
Yes, it's not a trick question. So if it has a weight point, right, through here, and then everything else is round, will I be able to get rid of that triangle, that corner, from doing triangular into round? I could, but I would have to recut that again, right? So if I keep it square, so flat to the head, then that corner is not going to be nearly as visible, right? So it's going to build the corner that's going to work for the head shape, hopefully, and work perfectly with the existing length through here. So even if I'm keeping my fingers square, it's still going to be a little bit of buildup of weight. It's just going to be an extremely lean version of the graduation, right? So do you remember, Shannon, your first time you did graduation, and we did a haircut that was like super creative, really short on the top, and then there was heavier graduation through here. And you had to take really lean section to lean that out to make it work for that.
Yes.
We technically doing exactly the same thing. So it's no longer becomes about the haircut that we're wanting to do. It's more so about the haircut that will work for the existing length, which becomes majority of the time in the hairdresser world becomes the more important part. If you have pre-existing length that don't work, or pre-existing length that a client comes in and says, I really like the length that I have in this spot, then you have to go by the rules, right, of that. Because you can't, if someone likes it, you can't touch it. So then you do the rest of the haircut depending on that length. So your cutting line, you have to visualize your whole vertical shape on how you're going to hold your fingers. Because if you don't, you're going to do whatever looks pretty, and then you're going to get to the top and say, oh, crap, I don't have enough hair, or my vertical shape doesn't look good. Do we have anyone watching at all? 2 people, great. So I'm just going to explain, because then I'm going to advertise for it, and hopefully people will come back and watch it later. Okay, so
I
when
want you to send it to me, I gotta find it too.
Marina Lantos hair, I think, on YouTube.
I don't remember what it's about.
And it'll be on there. And it will be Pixie haircut lesson, I believe I called it. I don't know why I used the word lesson, but that's besides the point. Okay, so for those of you who are joining us via YouTube, when I am talking about vertical shape, I am talking about up and down view. So view that you are noticing or you're seeing from top to the bottom of the head. So when we were talking about visualizing your vertical view, visualize the view of the hair that is going to be from here all the way to your hairline. All right, so my section in this area is getting higher, right? So now, if I didn't have pre-existing lengths, my fingers technically should be farther away from the head, right? Because if the head shape rounds off, I need more length in this area that I had in here, because parallel to this point would be here. So this length needs to be, if this is 1.5 inches higher on the head, this length needs to be 1.5 inches longer to travel to create that shape that I'm creating vertically. So, but I would assume I don't really have much hair to cut here. So if that's an issue for you when you're working, when you're doing your haircuts, you could always start from down here, which is going to be your guide that you already have existing from before. Don't move your hand position. Continue, and you're going to exaggerate that length. Make sense? So distance between my fingertips here and here was really close to the head. Look at that length that I preserved by not changing my hand position. So my vertical shape, when I cut that, I'm not changing my vertical shape. My vertical shape stays true to my cutting line, to what I was doing underneath the round of the head. If you follow the head shape, what shape will you create, Shannon?
Round.
Round. What would happen if we have round head shape, round cutting line on a head shape like Susan has?
You're gonna create a bulk, I was
Yep.
gonna say.
Where would the bulk sit?
Right where, I was gonna say where it's a little bit flatter.
Where the widest point is,
Or the, yeah.
right? Because the head shape sticks out.
Mm-hmm.
That means the hair is going to stick out. So again, I'm going to start in the part of the head that I started at the beginning, which means my section was from here. Same part of the head would be here. So I'm going to start it here. I either can go all the way down, all the way down to the hairline. And then from here, all I'm doing is I'm extending the line that I already created. So careful not to change your cutting line. How you held your fingers is exactly how you're going to hold it. Careful not to do that. So I have a feeling that I'm preserving a little too much length in here. I'm working as if that's exactly how I want the haircut to be. If it's too much length in comparison to what we have in here, which, like I said, I think it's a little too short, so not that I want to match up to that, I will just have to. So if I'm preserving too much length, Connie, then what am I creating in my overall shape, my overall vertical shape, when the whole haircut is done? So preserve too much, and then I have this area that's shorter.
What? You're building too much weight?
Yep, very good. So if I build too much weight, I'm going to have to recut my vertical shape where my zone 1, which is the zone that I'm working on now, and zone 2 is meeting. So zones, for YouTubers, zone is the area of the haircut that is staying throughout the haircut. So my zone 1, which is the zone that I'm working on now, was from apex to the parietal ridge. Anything from that section down is going to be my zone 1. Whatever is on top of that section is going to be my zone 2. Sections are the sections that I take to complete a zone. So here's my section, I would say 7. And continue following my guide all the way down to the hairline. And then the last bit is all the way up here. So right over here, you guys see how I have, where are you guys? So right over here, I have a little bit more length, and then the rest of the hair is not reaching. So that's the pre-existing length that I was worried that I was creating too much weight. So right now I have a little tiny bit of a point through here, which is okay. If it gets any bigger, I'm going to have to recut it. All right, so in my next section, still a really, really slight diagonal. Nothing has changed from the first section that I start working on to the last section that I'm going to finish with. All I'm doing is I am constantly moving with each section, and I'm paying attention to where the hair grows from the head. So if I'm constantly moving and I'm constantly paying attention to where the hair goes from the head, bringing out the hair from exactly where it grows and cutting it on base, which means cutting it exactly where that point where the hair grows from is, then I'm going to create a pure round shape. Do you guys agree?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I wanted to preserve length, Connie, this is a question for you. Actually, last question was for you. So Shannon, this question is for you. If I wanted to preserve length, what key factor would I need to use to achieve that in a vertical shape?
In a vertical shape.
If I wanted to preserve length, let's say back here,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, what key factor would I need? Okay, in a vertical shape. So your key hint is vertical shape. So don't think about vertical shape. Elevation is your vertical shape, right? Because elevation means this.
Yeah. My first thought was over direction, but then my second thought after that was going to be that would be more of your horizontal shape, which I know sometimes when we were talking they can go hand in hand still.
Right? So elevation and over direction is the same
Yeah.
thing. It's just a different view, right?
Yeah.
So your elevation is going to be this way,
Mm-hmm.
elevating hair or moving hair away from where it grows on the head, up and down. Over direction is moving hair away from where it grows, going side to side.
So then would it be your cutting line?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Connie and see what her thoughts are. If I wanna preserve length in my vertical shape, so preserve length in the vertical shape, would I be using key factors elevation, over direction, or cutting line.
I'm gonna say cutting line and elevation.
Why can it not be over direction? I mean, you could,
That's your,
but then we're going a little bit too deep into it.
'cause that's more your horizontal shape.
Because if I over direct, right, the length that I over directed away from is going to be longer, which is going to give me my horizontal shape. Very good job. You're good, be steady. Alright, switch it down. Alright, so on the first side, right, what did I do? Who wants to tell me? Shannon, let's start with you. What did I do with my first initial section?
You left it out, cause
Left
that you're
it out.
gonna attack, that you're gonna touch afterwards, once
Yes.
it's dry.
Second section, where did I over direct that section?
Into your third section.
Yes, so I moved it away from the face just a little bit. And what was the point of doing that, Connie?
To preserve length
Where?
around the face.
Good.
Wait, I can't find a good spot to go. Sorry, people.
Sorry, the two people that are watching right now.
One.
Voila.
Here we go. Okay, so before I continue, I have to check, right? So I want to make sure that I cross-check now before I go on with the rest of the haircut and then realize my side one is shorter, because now I have to recut the whole thing, right? So hold the end, bring it down to where it naturally falls. Also, be careful when you're cross-checking, if your sides are a little bit off, so this is a little bit lower because there's more hair on this side, so I want to keep the disconnected piece a little bit heavier. So I want to make sure that the length are not, they don't have to be the same. Where they're falling on the face needs to be even. So this side is a little hint longer, so that means I need to go back and cut that a little bit shorter. All right, so again, so that means I either created too much of a triangular cutting line in my vertical shape, and most likely drop my elevation a little tiny bit. Careful to grab just your section number 2. Section number 1 has not been cut. Alright, so now my cutting line is not going to change, right? My elevation is not going to change, and my over direction is going to be what, Connie?
3 into 4? Is that where we are?
Yes, but in less of a technical term,
Into
which
the next.
shape is going to be? Into the next, yep. Which shape is it going to be? My, so my over direction, which means my horizontal shape, is going to be what?
Triangular. No, round.
Square.
Square.
Square, good. The other geometric shape, very nice. When clients know more than hairdressers, right?
It's hard to pay attention and do this at the same time.
You don't
I know
have to
you're
pay attention
focusing
to that.
Oh, I
You
gotta
just
make
hold it.
sure it's
Make
good.
sure you're at a good angle, you're
Yeah.
seeing everything.
Very good point. Connie, soon enough, you're gonna have to go into like at the end of the movie, what is it called, the
credits.
the credits. And then something else I wanted to ask. So if over direction up, what part of the head am I paying attention to when I am cutting a round shape, or any shape actually for that matter, Connie?
The parietal.
Okay.
Really?
What part of the scalp am I paying attention to when I'm creating shapes? What part of the head, what part of this,
The round.
yeah, I don't know how to ask this question without giving the answer.
The
Shannon.
part that sticks out the most?
That's
I would have said the rounds of the head
Yeah.
too.
Okay, so I was looking for the
Muscle,
word
sorry.
base,
Oh.
but I don't know how to ask that any differently. Alright, so I'm paying attention to where the hair grows from, and constantly staying on base And what does on base mean, Shannon?
Combing the hair directly out from where it naturally grows.
Yes. So if I stay on base, I create round shape. If I want to create a shape that does not mimic the head shape, then I would need to move the hair away from where it grows on the head. Either right or left, or up and down. Okay, so here is where I'm starting to create a little bit more length right at the parietal ridge, because the section goes up. I have more of the head shape in my zone 1 the farther back I go, which means the length needs to gradually change the farther back I go. Next section, really clean sections. Make sure you're combing the hair out of the way so you can see your diagonal section nice and neat. Come out. Your comb is always going to follow the section that you have in the haircut. So if I have slight diagonal, my comb is slight diagonal. My fingers are mimicking the cutting line that I already created. So all I have to do is from the first section, keep doing exactly the same thing over and over and over, and I'll have my haircut. The minute that you decide to change your cutting line or change how you're holding your fingers, most likely you're going to change the shape that you are creating, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So why do we change the shape that we're creating? Sometimes by mistake, right? Because we were uncomfortable, for example, or we couldn't figure out how to hold our hands, so we just changed the hands, and little by little, it creates more weight, different shape, more length, whatever the case is. So if you constantly move, and you constantly do the same thing, you have to find that almost like a sweet spot, wherever your hand is going to be comfortable. So for example, my hand right now is comfortable, but my elbow is hitting the side of my body. So what I could do is I can just show the side of my body. So what I can do is I can move just half a step after I bring out my hair, the hair from the head. What I can do is just step back a little tiny bit. So this way I'm not changing where my hand position is. All I'm changing is my lower body so that my hand can fit, or my elbow can fit, and my body doesn't get in the way. So for example, now that Kanye is zoomed out, here's my elevation, here's my direction. For me to cut, my elbow is getting in the way. I'm going to move out of the way. Now I'm good. Next section, still diagonal. Also a little trick to keep your sections really clean and really neat. So if you put your thumb right on the hair, the heat from your hand and the heat from the scalp will make the hair stay. I almost never use cutting lotion because cutting lotion prevents seeing the shape that you're creating on certain hair textures. Obviously, if you have really frizzy hair or if you have hair that's hard to manage, cutting lotion is a huge help. But for easy hair like Susan's, just water is plenty. So I'm going to finish this section and then spritz a little tiny bit more water. So a lot of times, if I don't see a clean section in someone's partings, most likely either the hair is too dry, or when you're combing the hair, you're being a little bit too wobbly. So make up your mind where you want to go, where you want your elevation to be, and where you want your over direction to be. From that point, comb directly down. So if I want my section to be from here to here, and then I'm going to stay in here, I'm going to stay in exactly where I'm going to be cutting. Place the comb in, diagonal section. My thumb followed my comb. Keep holding it until you fully comb the whole section out of the way. Let go, and that will stay. So move with my section. So, a trick question. It's not really a trick question, but it's a good one. For Shannon.
Oh, yay.
would you say your upper body or your lower body will dictate your horizontal shape?
I think both of them would. Because your lower body, where you're standing, is going to be a huge factor of where your over direction is. And then your upper body, if it's slightly off or uncomfortable, can also change your horizontal sections.
Okay, I would have to agree with you, but now let's take it back just a little bit less experience that you have. If we only paying attention to where you're standing, which is going to be your lower body, and how you're holding the hair, which is going to be your upper body, what do you think controls your horizontal shape more? What do you have to, obviously your hands are going to do whatever they have to do, but if your lower body is not, let's say, is standing in one spot, what shape would that tell you that you're most likely going to do? Because that's going to be the most comfortable shape. Or what shape you're going to do if you constantly move and gradually go around the head.
And your lower body's
So
going to
your
be...
lower body is going to, what's the word?
Be more important?
Yes. Control, there you go. Collect, I want to say the word collect, which makes no sense at all. So, but your original answer that you gave was obviously the perfect answer. It's not necessarily where you stand, right? It's what you're doing to the hair and the head shape. So where you bring in the scalp and on base and the hair that grows from the head. So, but if you're a beginner and if you're just starting to do hair and you want to create a shape that follows the head shape, you have to pay attention to your feet. The feet has to move. And the hands will do the same. All right, so I am approaching my last section. Since I had diagonal sections, my diagonal sections will eventually crisscross each other. So my last section is going to be more so of a cross check to make sure that my right side and my left side are meeting up. So if you have a lot of hair to cut here, most likely the shape that you created on one side or the length that you chose to leave the hair on one side was very different than the length on the opposite side. So if it's matching up, then good job. Thumbs up. Okay. So by moving the hair around, your vertical shape becomes a lot more visible, right? So now if we look at the silhouette from the beginning, right? So the silhouette from the beginning came out from here, and then gradually, not gradually, but severely went short, right? So now, especially because Susan has a little bit of curls, and I can get these curls to sort of stick out, now the shape looks really, really pretty, right? I know these pieces are gonna be a little tiny bit shorter, so I'm gonna have a little bit of a gap here, but we're going to pretend that that's not the case, and just pull a lot more on these hairs, right? So the silhouette this way is great. Okay, so next stop, so a cross check, a vertical section. Obviously you could cross check it horizontally, diagonally, the opposite way, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're cross checking. So I'm gonna cross check and see if I got any knuckle marks. So right over here, I have just a tiny, tiny bit of almost like dips. So that's where the section was a little tiny bit too wide. And I created a little bit of over direction. So you want to go through the opposite way, go through and make sure this line looks really, really neat and really clean. The longer the hair, the easier it is to stay on base. The shorter the hair, the harder it is, because now you're working with the head shape, you're working with cowlicks, you have to take really, really clean and neat sections. Otherwise, you're gonna end up creating these little peaks that you have in the hair and on the head. So, and also to take a really clean, neat section on short hair is quite hard because you can't clip the rest of the hair out of the way. So whenever I do a pixie, if I know there won't be scissor or comb involved afterwards or clipper work, you always want to go through the opposite direction. go through, check it, make sure everything looks really, really good. So shockingly, usually my left side is my harder side. My left side looks really pretty. Right over here, this area through here is always a really difficult spot for me because you have to get your fingers so close behind the ear, and it's quite difficult to do so. Well, at least for me it is. So you always want to go through, make sure everything looks really neat. I am going to scissor over comb just a little tiny bit, just because I always do. It's almost like my double checking. Make sure everything grows out really nicely in the next couple months, or 4 to 6 weeks. And the same thing through here. So the next stop, or the next part of the haircut, is dropping my zone 2 down and watching the connection point. So right now, ideally, the length that is on top of the round of the head should be longer, right? So then this way I could create the corners however I choose to. So since we already have pre-existing length that grows right through the top of the head, I'm going to comb this all directly down, take a vertical section, bring it out to the same elevation and over direction how I was cutting the underneath, which was here. Okay? So I don't have anything to cut, which means the length on the top is too short. So I'm going to lift it a little bit higher. I'm going to have a little tiny bit of a corner. So that little buildup of weight, I have to take that off. That means the shape that I created in zone 1 does not connect to zone 2, which we knew that from the beginning. So if I connect it a little bit better, at least it's going to look like it belongs there. Otherwise, it's going to be too flat, too bulky. So from this point, I'm going to take vertical sections, comb the hair out of the way, work on base and my elevation, so where I'm bringing the hair, not directly to the side, not directly up, but right sort of in the middle. And here's that little spot that has a little bit of a buildup of weight because my finger position showed that where my fingertips were here on this side were farther away from the head than my knuckles. So I've created a shape that goes farther away from the head on the top, shorter and leaner and closer to the head shape as we went closer to the hairline, which is triangular shape. Next section. Stay on base. On base means wherever hair grows from, that's where I'm going to bring it out on my vertical shape, on my horizontal shape. On my vertical shape, I'm bringing it out not directly to the side, not directly up, but right in the sort of corner where the parietal ridge is. Anything that grows from the front of the ear, I'm going to start over directing. So I'm moving hair to exactly the same spot as where I was cutting just now. So the reason for it is I want to create more length of the hair, for the hair that grows into by the front hairline, especially because we have color. Obviously, I want to cut that out. I want to keep all that blue right in there. And if I cut it shorter, then that blue is going to be, one, it's going to be not as much left. It's also going to look a little chunky. So here it is. So from this point, do I have a traveling guide or a stationary guide, Connie?
Stationary.
Good. All right, so the last part is I'm going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side. So comb the hair nice and clean all the way down. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to tilt my head just a little bit over. Again, vertical section, nice and clean. I'm going to pull in the hair a little bit less here. I have a cowlick. It's a little bit stronger on this side than it is on the opposite. So I'm going to leave that as is, just kind of clean it up. Make sure everything is looking good. Again, with each section, I'm going to be moving closer to the front hairline. Again, there's a little bit of a cowlick, so I want to keep that disconnected When that drops down, it will connect. Alright, so my last section from moving guide. From this point, I'm gonna become stationary. Why do I wanna become stationary? Shannon?
Because you want to direct the hair back to create length. So you want to keep your guide the same.
So I cut off that length, right at the connection point from zone 1 and zone 2. I'm gonna point cut a little tiny bit because there's a strong calic happening right underneath. The rest of the section are going to get brought where, Connie?
To that stationary guide.
Yes, same point where I was cutting, which is going to be on this side because this is the heavier side behind the ear. And the last part.
Would your approach be different if, say, Susan kept her part exactly the same all the time, or because it's just that top area, it could go like both sides?
Right now it's just a hint asymmetrical, only because I kept my section a little bit lower in my zone 2 on this side. But if you push it to the other side, it's gonna look good. So this is called a cut on the bias. Technically it's cut on the bias, so it's cut like this, except I don't really have the peak because I didn't cut any of that hair. So if there was more length in here, and if you cut it going this way, so you took a section going like this and going like that, doesn't matter how you part it, it's always going to look good. Alright, so I'm going to leave these front pieces for when it's dry, right? Because I want to make sure that they are falling, however, at a natural fall without too much work. And then I will, I'll make sure that that matches. Yeah. Feels good?
Yeah.
Okay.
You.
So on short hair like this, I try not to use too much product. Mostly my fingers makes it really, really easy for applying. Always go over it on the amount of tension that you're putting into the hair. So right in here, we have the most amount of calics, right? So I want to pull on this hair a little bit more. So you want to say the same thing to your client. You want to move it around. Try not to even use a brush. Keep your fingers sort of like circular motions, back and forth, back and forth. This sort of fluffing the hair and zhuzhing the hair creates a lot of movement around the scalp. Also, Susan's hair is almost, the scalp is a lot more tighter, so you have to move the hair around. Otherwise, the hair, how it grows from the head, is exactly how it's going to be. So if Susan came out of the shower and did absolutely nothing to her hair, then every single calic that Susan has will be pointing out. So like your hair, your calics won't be as noticeable because you have give to the scalp, right? It's a little more flexible. And then the length that you have in the front, always blow dry to the opposite side. Why do you want to do that? Because you want more volume at the shortest bits of the haircut. So back and forth, right? All of this already looks good. No brush needed. For the front, the longer bits, I always blow dry them with a dust brush. What happens if I take out a round brush? It will be a little too bubbly, right? And immediately it will make a cool haircut, a pixie, look a bit more outdated. So brush back and forth. A little to the left, down, a little to the right. If you need to create a little bit more volume, so how much movement you have away off of the scalp, off of the forehead, you can lift it a little tiny bit, but make sure that you always drop the elevation all the way down so you're polishing that hair. Creates volume at the root, brings it down all the way so the ends are nice and straight. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Lift a little bit higher, drop all the way down. Lift a little bit higher, drop all the way down.
You didn't do anything to the top ends.
So cute, nothing.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yep. So some of it is this, for
Right.
sure. Like you say, you didn't do anything to your hair today, so
No.
obviously it's going to look better when someone else blow dries
Yeah.
it. But it's taking this shorter.
Yeah, wow.
See, now you have a head shape of a doll head.
So, yay, so cute.
All right, so first I'm going to do, I'm gonna get rid of the pieces that I don't like. So this side, the sideburn area was much longer to begin with, right? So we have this first section that's super, super long. So right now it kind of bugs me and I can't concentrate on anything else. And that's always going to be the case. Get rid of things that you don't like hairlines around the front. You look like twins. Get rid of the pieces that you don't like. The rest you can appreciate the things that are already, looking good. All right, so pinch gently, give it a little bit of a tug, open and close where you want your shortest piece to start, right? So if I want my shortest piece to be here, I'm gonna place my blade right against that spot. If I want my shortest piece to be here, I'm gonna start here. So I'm gonna place the blade right against the shortest piece. Just move your thumb a little tiny, tiny bit and slide your scissor gently down the hair length. So again, I'm gonna do that until I like the length. Am I combing away?
A little bit.
So lift it off of the skin. Back and forth, back and forth. The movement of the scissor when you're doing this is what's cutting it. It's not jamming hair into the pivoting point of the scissor and letting the blade itself cut. So you always have to open and close the scissor. There's always has to be some kind of movement. Otherwise you'll be, well, you might be pulling hair out of the scalp. It might not be the most convenient or comfortable thing for your client. Right, so nice and soft. Any pieces that are too soft, you want to be a little bit more blunt about it. All right, so next part is I'm going to worry about the hairline in front of the ear. So again, natural part, natural fall. Don't make the hair do whatever it doesn't want to do, right? Because Susan's not going to go home and style her hair nearly as much as us professionals. So you want to push it down wherever naturally falls. Move the ear just a little tiny bit out of the way. And I'm going to point cut into it, but really, really gently. So I don't want to leave a hard line through here. I want to create softness, right? It doesn't need to be super precise unless we're going for that specific look. So hair that grows on top of the ear, I want it to be a little bit more stiffer, a little bit more harder, because otherwise these pieces are just going to lay over the ear and look like Susan hasn't had a haircut in a while. So anything that's in front of the ear, I usually leave on the softer side, unless the client specifies that they don't want that. Okay. Same thing on the opposite side. So now I'm going to use the mirror to make sure that I'm balanced on both sides. So brush this forward just a little tiny bit, see the length, see how it's falling, right? So overall length is shorter. It looks a little bulkier through here. So again, I'm gonna pinch. This is just weight removal, not the length. So grab, cut a little bit off, grab, slide the scissors through a little tiny bit, lift a little tiny bit higher if you wanna preserve the length that's underneath. So just cut that hair from the top, left all the underneath the same length, right? So it's still a little tiny bit too long. And I feel like this takes me a couple of times because you have to continue playing with it on how it's falling. And every time you remove weight, the hair is going to fall a little bit differently, right? Because there's no weight that's pushing the hair to go in a certain way. So check how it's falling. Check for balance, make sure all that looks good. All right, so it feels pretty good to me. Now I'm going to clean up in front of the ear. So here's the hair. Here it is. Still in front of the ear, so point cutting, leaving it a little bit softer. And then on top of the ear, a little bit stronger. hair doesn't stick out in a couple of weeks. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to check for balance of the haircut, right? So overall shape that I'm seeing looks really good, right? So everything is sort of falling where it belongs. So now I have to find heavy points, right? So right in here, it kind of falls, and no matter how much I move it, it just drops down, right? So I want to lift this part, and then all I'm going to do is point cut right into that spot, move that section back a little tiny bit. That's
Did it stop the live?
no, we're still going. Cool. So by point cutting, I'm removing heavy lines, right? Strong lines that were created by a blunt cut. So from the previous haircut, we have really, really strong blunt cuts that are happening in here. So I'm removing the heaviness of them or the minimal removal of length itself. So comb it out. The farther your scissor goes into the hair, the more texture you're creating. The more surface point cutting you're doing, the more it's just the ends that are getting textured. All right, so next section, I'm going a little bit closer to the front hairline. Again, same concept. Point cutting a little bit stronger because the length of the hair is longer. So I'm holding my fingers farther away from the ends of the hair. Scissors is parallel to the hair. Look how far I'm going in, right? I'm going in about 1.5 inches in here. So when I drop it, it melts together a lot more. All right, so now the last part that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a diagonal section, comb the hair to the opposite side, diagonal section. I want length on the top of my section to be shorter, length on the bottom to be longer, right? Because I want to preserve the length that's around the face. All the way in, point cut, softness, and then blended with the existing length. Move that out of the way. Next section, the same thing. Again, I want to preserve the length that is around the face, which means I need to over direct, right? I need to move the hair away so that I'm not touching that. Look how heavy that looks, right? So I can point cut right into the spot, especially the darker pieces. Blue can stay a little bit heavier because then it will be a little bit more noticeable. Drop that all the way down. Next section. Again. Is there a little chunk of black right over here? Well, not black, dark brown. I'm going to point cut that a little bit stronger. Alright, so now I'm going to let this hair fall wherever Susan is going to wear and then see how it's falling. So this part looks really good. It's skinny enough. It veils over nicely. Right over here is just a little tiny bit heavy for me. So, which means I need to get rid of the heaviness that it's falling right through here. So I'm going to do the same exact thing. Heaviness is down here, which means stand a little bit towards the side. Lift higher up. Point cut just a little bit. Here it is. Next section. Here's that heaviness that I was seeing. Good. And then the last thing I'm going to do is the calyx that we have in here. So if I tilt Susan's head a little bit over, work over my fingers. And again, you just want to point cut it right into that spot just to soften how the hair falls. I don't want to remove any of the length, right? Because that's the parietal ridge. That's where we need the length to stay the longest. so that we're not following the head shape with our silhouette of the haircut. So, but I want it to be soft, otherwise it's going to always fall and create almost like a ridge in the haircut. All right, so let's look in the mirror. So just a little tiny bit long right in that spot, not long, heavy. So a little tiny bit more point cutting right in that spot. So there are different techniques that you can use for dry cutting. Right, I could have used the feather razor to remove that heaviness. Anytime I want to create a lot of softness, I point cut. Anytime I need to remove weight and length, I do slide cutting. So lift and slide through the hair. Right, there's also back combing. So for example, if I needed more softness right in these areas, which they feel much, much better already, but a little tiny bit can work too. So I'm creating this motion, open and close, as I'm going down the hair, down the length of the hair. So it also helps to create short and long length. If you twist the hair a little tiny bit, take a section, twist, and go right towards the root. And then when you remove the length, you're removing from the outside and create almost like a longer bit right in the middle. All right, so let's see, make sure the hairline looks really good. Pull down just a little bit for me. So I would say Susan's hairline, I would leave it a little bit more on the softer side. Due to the head shape, how right in here kind of doesn't like dip in, doing any hard line, right, and the hairline is quite strong in here. So I would leave this soft, and however it sort of wings out, I would just keep it at that. The minute that you create strong outlines on finer hair textures, then the minute that it grows out, right, it's kind of like, it's strong, but it's soft at the same time. So it's like too much in the middle. So for the next time, when Susan comes in, I would leave this a little more wispier. Right over here, you could tell that the hairline grows up. So what you could always do is you can remove that length underneath and let that hair veil over it, so then it'll be softer. All right, so a little bit of styling product. What do you usually use? Like a dry paste?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll use Freehold, like that I'm working on you.
Okay.
It's like a sticky, pasty, easy to work with. Doesn't weigh the hair down. Kind of feels good. A little bit, that much. And then always move it around in your hands first, so it's almost like warms up your hands. And then when I apply it, go right from the ear all the way over, from the ear all the way over, back and forth. Do the back so that every single hair on your head sort of gets a little bit of the product. And then when it looks too crazy, then you want to tame it down, make it stick out sort of where you want it to be. You want to do a little full hawkish, more hawkish. You can. Good luck on you, woman. Much better, right?
Thank you so much.
Super, super cute. So if you want to do the length a little bit longer, right, if you want to keep the sides a little bit more closer to what you had, then, just go as long until the haircut sort of doesn't look good anymore.
Right, I
Maybe
guess
like
I could just
6
get
weeks.
this cleaned up here.
Yep, I would clean
Yeah.
this up, texture this, this will probably get a little bit heavy.
Right.
And then just kind of grow the sides a little bit once
Yeah.
this is a little bit longer.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, awesome. All right, thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching.
How do I stop it?
Peace. Here? I don't know.